Welcome to the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers. There are no traffic jams along the Extra Mile when you're studying for your bar exam. And now, your host, Jackson Mummy, owner of the Celebration Bar Review.
Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 260 of the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers. This is your host, Jackson Mummy. Glad to have you with us today. And we come to you every week to talk about how you can make the next bar exam your last bar exam, and to show you an effective and affordable step-by-step plan in order to pass the bar. So really glad to have you with us today. We know a lot of you are starting to really focus in on the July 2019 exam. That test will be about 3 weeks away when this episode releases. And so we know that this is a really critical time for you. And that's why the focus of our message today is going to be a little different, I guess, in the sense that I wanted to talk about what it is that makes you special and why we celebrate you. You know, I recognize that with 3 weeks to go, it feels really difficult, and it is a time of great stress for a lot of people. I also know that it's a moment when anything going wrong can feel like a crisis. You know, I don't understand the answer to this one multiple choice question, and suddenly that becomes a major obstacle for some people. It's a time when you can get discouraged. It's certainly a time when a lot of people get worn out. And so I thought today we'd talk a little bit about some of the things that you could look at that should make you feel better about what you've done and where you've gotten to reach this point. Now, if you're not taking the July 2019 exam, I think all these same things are true of you if you're taking the exam in 2020. So I hope you'll stick around and check out that message. As always, our podcasts are provided to you in a couple of different ways. You can watch the podcast on video by going to celebrationbarreview.com/260, that's the episode number. If you prefer to listen to the podcast, you can do that on Apple iTunes Radio. You can do it on radio.com, on Spotify, on iHeartRadio, lots of places where podcasts are syndicated. And if you're listening, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of the episodes. Now, we've got the show notes on both the video and audio pages, and all of the information that you need is there. We also have an archive of all of our podcast episodes, going back to the very first ones, on our website. Just check that out. It's under the Case Studies tab on the site at celebrationbarreview.com. Again, we're really glad if you found us. If this is your first time here, we're delighted that you're here. If you've been a long-time listener, we appreciate that, and we thank you so much for your continued loyalty. We know your time is valuable. Before we jump into today's message, I want to let you know that this podcast is sponsored, as always, by our free webinar called Do Something Different, Make the Next Bar Exam Your Last Bar Exam. In this 90-minute webinar, we're going to go through the 4 steps that successful passing students follow in order to take the exam, get through it, and get done with it. You'll hear from students in their own words. You'll see step-by-step what we do, and I think you'll find it extraordinarily helpful. Now, this webinar is Thursday night at 7 p.m., and it's totally free, but you do need to register in advance. You can do that by going to the show notes on the video or audio page of this podcast. Just click on the button and register. Or you can go to our website at celebrationbarreview.com/webinar and register there. And then we'll see you Thursday night at 7 p.m. for Do Something Different, Make the Next Bar Exam Your Last Bar Exam. Well, I don't want to keep you waiting any longer. Let's go ahead and jump into this week's message, why you're special and why we celebrate you. Well, the 4th of July has come and gone, and as always, it makes me stop and think about what it is we're really celebrating. And of course, with a name like Celebration Bar Review, I suppose it's only natural that we would think about what we celebrate in the bar review, not just in the country. And so in this message, I wanted to talk about 6 things that we think are special about students taking the bar, and certainly our students, and why we're celebrating you. And so if you're feeling a little discouraged or a little down or a little tired or frustrated, I hope you'll stick with me. I want to just briefly talk about some reasons why, in spite of all of the struggle and hardship that the bar exam presents, you really should be feeling pretty good. So let's jump right into it. The first reason that we think you're special and why we celebrate you here is because you are fearless. That's right. You are fearless. You know, it takes a certain kind of person to be willing to let themselves be judged by someone else. And let's face it, the bar exam is nothing but judgment. It's judgment on your academic ability. It's judgment on your skill set. It's judgment on your temperament. It's judgment on your time management. It's judgment on where you went to school. It's judgment on just about every part of you. And a lot of people would just say, you know what? I'm not up for that. I'm not going to do that. You can't judge me. And I understand why they'd feel that way. But those of you that are taking the bar exam are willing to put yourselves out there. You're fearless. You're willing to be judged on the basis of all of those things and willing to say, here's where I am. Here's what I can do. Here's what I can accomplish. Here's my ability. That is really a remarkable thing to do. And in a world where a lot of people keep their head down and sort of go inside their shell, it's really an extraordinary person that is fearless enough to be willing to be judged. And I think you deserve credit for that. I think you're also fearless because you're taking a risk. It was a risk for many of you to go to law school. It was a risk for many of you perhaps to decide to move from one jurisdiction to the other if you already had a law practice in one place. It is a risk to take the bar exam. There was a time in the bar exam when most people that took it, the vast majority of people passed. It was a given. If you were going to take the bar, we would assume 90% of you would pass, certainly on the first try, and the other handful the next time around. That's no longer the case, and it hasn't been that way for a number of years, probably since about 2007 and 2008 when the economy went into its most recent recession. And the reality is that now taking the bar is a risk that you're going to fail. It's a risk that you've put in the time and the money in school and in learning and training, and it might account for absolutely nothing. I've seen people who have literally bankrupted themselves in trying to pass the bar and been unable to do that, and that's really tragic. But the truth is that you're fearless enough to take the risk. And the truth to me is that if you're fearless enough to take this risk, you're going to be a good lawyer. Because, you know, good lawyers have to take some risks. They have to put themselves out there. They have to go a little bit further. And the kind of people who pass the bar, I think ultimately are the ones that are risk takers. Now, they're not crazy, insane daredevils. They don't go over Niagara Falls in a barrel, but they take the risk of putting themselves out there and then taking the test in order to pass it and move on. I also think that you're fearless, particularly if you're in our course, because you're willing to do something different. And here's what I mean. There are an awful lot of people in the bar exam world who just follow the crowd. They just do what everyone else is doing. And as we're going to talk about in a minute, it generally doesn't work out very well for them. And then there are a small few people who look up from the lemming-like march over the cliff and say, you know what, this is crazy. This doesn't work. These things that the big companies have been telling me and that the big law schools have been telling me may not be true, and I'm prepared to do something different because it's important to me to pass the exam, and I recognize that doing the same old thing is going to give me the same old results. For those of you that chose to do something different, to take a different approach to your study, that chose to take an approach that was built on whole mind learning, on intuition, on a different approach to reading and studying and note-taking, a different approach to essay writing, when you put all that together, you are in fact doing something different. And that means that you're fearless. And that's where success comes from. The people that fail oftentimes fail because they are afraid. They're afraid to do anything differently. And so they just keep following the crowd, even when they know the crowd isn't doing a very good job. And so congratulations, if you are in our course, you're fearless and you're doing something different. And if you're not in our course and you're still out there willing to be judged, willing to take a risk and trying to do something different, that's good too. And that makes you special and why we would celebrate you. So that's our first reason that you're fearless. The second reason that we think you're special and ought to be celebrated is that if you are getting ready to take the bar exam, you are clearly determined. You know, if we go back in your own history and you look back at your history, you may have been the first person in your family to go to college, or the first person to get into law school, or the first person in your family to practice law. Maybe you were one of a handful of people that you knew in your social circle that were going on to law school and to the practice of law. You were determined to do it. You know, I work with a lot of students who come from non-traditional backgrounds. They came from either parts of the world or parts of the country where no one expected them to go to college, to go to law school, to take the bar exam. And yet, the one thing that those individuals have in common is a fierce determination. It's a willingness to continue to press on for their dreams and for their goals and for their families and for their communities. And so the determination it took to get to the point where you are taking the bar exam is no small matter. And you should not blow that off or brush it off and say, well, it didn't really matter. Sure, it does. It mattered a lot. Some of you were determined enough to put yourself into debt. Some of you were determined enough to move to someplace else to go to school. Some of you were determined enough to do whatever it took, take the time off of work, doing other things, maybe putting your personal life on hold so that you could get this part of your life taken care of. That's a determination, and that determination is an amazing skill, and it's a great quality, and you should be applauded for that. I also think that many of you here are determined to pass the exam. And you might say, well, of course I want to pass it, but I'm talking about a different level here. I'm talking about the people that are truly determined, and maybe they haven't been successful on the exam previously. And so the people that are really determined are the ones that are willing to invest their dollars, their money, their time, and their associations. It is a sacrifice to study for the bar. It's a sacrifice with your family, with your work, with your community, with your friends. All of those things have to take a back seat for a season while you study. And certainly it's not inexpensive to go to law school. It's not inexpensive to study for the bar. It's not inexpensive to drop out of work for a while to study. Those things cost money and they take time. And in all of those situations, a determination to pass the bar that says, I'm simply not going to do anything other than expect to succeed is absolutely critical. And so if you're determined to pass the bar, congratulations, you're the right kind of person to be a member of the bar. I think in the same way, if you're determined to find a way to succeed, you're the kind of person that we love to work with. So often I find people who say, well, I want to pass, but I'm not really willing to do the things it takes to pass. I'm not willing to put in the time or the money. I'm not willing to make the sacrifices. And really more, I think to the point, I'm not willing to change anything I'm doing. If you're someone who really is determined to pass, then you're going to find your way. Robert Schuller is an interesting character. He passed away a few years ago, but Schuller was a pastor, and he was also someone that really believed in the power of positive thinking. And he said, if there's a wall in front of me, I'm going to find my way to dig under it or climb over it or go around it, but I simply won't be stopped by it. It was that kind of determination that made him such a popular figure. I think when you are determined to find a way to succeed, then you will succeed. So often, though, I see people who are not determined and they hit a setback, they hit a roadblock, they don't pass the exam on their first try, and they just give up. Or they try a couple of times doing the same thing over and over again, and then they give up. And then they come back to me 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20 years later and say, it's still on my list, I've still got to do it. And now they're determined in a way they weren't before. So if you're determined to pass the bar, congratulations, you are the right person to be a member of the bar. Well, we have two qualities that I think you should be celebrated for, being fearless and being determined. The third goes right along with these. You should be celebrated, you're special, if you refuse to quit. Bar failure for many people equates to personal failure. I failed the bar, therefore I am a failure. That is an untrue statement. It is a lie. And if you've been thinking that, you need to stop that thinking right now. The failure on the bar exam simply represents that for a period of 2 or 3 days, you did not perform to a relatively subjective standard set by someone else about what it takes to be a successful member of the bar. It does not in any way implicate your success or failure in life, and you should not treat it that way at all. The people who refuse to quit never see that connection. They never say to themselves, the failure on the test makes me a failure. In fact, they say the failure on the test makes me mad or angry or determined, or it gives me energy to keep going. And what happens is that instead of letting that define them, they actually go the opposite direction. The people who refuse to quit are not defined by their prior results. They absolutely don't let that define who they are in any other part of their life. I've talked to people who failed the bar exam more than 20 times. And I will tell you that those people are not failures in their life. They're successful parents, they're successful employees, they're successful friends, they're successful members of their community in lots of ways. And they simply don't allow themselves to quit or give up. I think that if you refuse to quit, what you're really saying is, I'm not going to allow the bar exam system to define me. And to me, this is one of the most important statements that you can make. Yes, you have to take the test, you put yourself out there, you take the risk, you do all the things we've just talked about. But at the same time, you don't allow that system, that test, that set of multiple choice questions and essays and performance tests to define who you are. If you allow yourself to quit, then you are giving up. You are saying, well, I've been defined by this test. You know, some of the greatest stories that we have of successful students in our course are people who failed the exam many, many, many times. And candidly, we've had people fail the exam as many as 25 or 26 times before they passed. And those stories are amazing. These are people that you love to hear from and love to be around. Why? Because they just refused to quit. It's also pretty exciting to hear the story of someone who refused to quit after 2 or 3 tries at the exam. It doesn't really matter how many times you try, it's that you continue to press on. And of course, to do something different so that you get a different result. I think the people who refuse to quit are the ones I love to work with the very most, because they're the ones that push themselves to simply be better, to do better, to keep trying until they make it over the top. And that's a remarkable quality, and one that I would want to have in any member of the bar. I don't want a lawyer who's a quitter. I want a lawyer who's a fighter, don't you? All right. Our fourth reason why you're special, why we're celebrating you, is that you have a reason for becoming a member of the bar. I am very fortunate that we don't work with very many 3Ls. I love 3Ls. I was a 3L. I taught 3Ls. I've had time with 3Ls. I've even been related to 3Ls. And I got to tell you, they're a little bit tough to work with, aren't they? You know, 3Ls come in all shapes and sizes like the rest of us, but 3Ls typically say things like, I don't know, I got to take the bar because it's either that or live at home in my mom's basement. Not a very compelling reason to take the bar exam. And when you talk to 3Ls, you kind of go between 2 poles and 2 opposites. There's that pole, and then there's the 3L who's so arrogant, so obnoxious, so know-it-all, that they say, oh, I don't need anything. I'm brilliant. I was on law review. I can do this, this, and this. And you think to yourself, oh, God, please, you know, I can hardly wait till you become a member of the bar and you get bench slapped for that arrogance. Or the partner tells you that you're nowhere near as intelligent and lovely and wonderful as you seem to be in your 2L summer associate internship. You know, the reality is that the best people to work with and the best people for the bar exam, and certainly for our bar review, are people who have a reason to become a member of the bar, who are passionate about their dream and what they're trying to do. I love the fact that we work with so many people who want to make a mark in the law. Maybe they're already working as a paralegal, or maybe they're working in a different jurisdiction. We are working with people doing amazing things on all sides of the politics of this country right now. I'm not choosing sides in the political battle when it comes to this. I've got people that want to be district attorneys and people that want to be public defenders. I've got people that want to do corporate mergers, and I work with people that want to break up antitrust monopolies. The point is not what your politics are, but that you have a passion for the law, that you believe in the rule of law, and you want to be part of the system. And because of that, you are determined to pass the bar. You have a reason. The other interesting thing to me is that we think it's important to work with people who represent the width and breadth of the legal community. You know, there are underrepresented voices in our community. There are far too many people in the practice of law that look and sound like me. I was born this way. This is all I got. I can't be any other way. But you know, I really feel strongly that the law and the bar is better off when we hear from the voices of those who are underrepresented. And so I have found that those who are underrepresented, either by gender or race or religion or background, that those individuals have a deep, passionate reason for becoming members of the bar. And I love seeing those dreams come true. I love seeing the impact that they make. And it's been really remarkable over the past 30 years to see what our graduates and our alums have done out in the practice of law. I think that if it's true for you that you're taking the bar because you want to create a better life, you want to represent maybe other people in your world, in your community, people that you know, people that look like you or sound like you or believe as you do, or even just because you want to be part of the voice of the rule of law. All of those things make you a really ideal candidate for our course and for the bar exam because you have a reason. The people that don't have a reason, well, it's pretty easy to disrupt them. It's pretty easy to blow them off their game. And so when they don't have a reason and they fail once or twice or 3 times, they just walk away. It's not meaningful enough to them. But I've worked with people who were single parents, who had seen suffering and had seen economic hardship and had experienced difficulties in their lives and in their communities and in their families, who simply were not going to give up until they got a seat at the table and became a member of the bar. And that kind of individual, the one that has a real reason for doing this, oh my gosh, they're the best people to work with. And they're the people that we want to serve at Celebration Bar Review. All right, I've identified 4 qualities so far: fearless, determined, refuse to quit. You have a reason. I got 2 more to go. We love and celebrate the people who follow their own path, the ones that create their own journey and don't follow the crowd. I referenced this earlier. There's an awful lot of fear in the legal community, and certainly in law schools. You are told to be afraid right from the very beginning. And that's why the big box bar reviews come to 1Ls and they say, look, here's a t-shirt and a free pizza, and you can buy your bar review this first week that you're in law school, because if you don't, well, you're going to be left behind and you're going to not pass the bar. And they start with fear right away, don't they? And many of us remember that experience. And then those same people get into bar exam prep 3-4 years later, and they go, oh my God, what have I done? This is literally a march to nowhere. And they begin to realize that they have made a very poor decision about how to study. But because they're in with the crowd and they're afraid to break away, they just continue on, even though they know they're not going to be successful. I think many of you would be surprised at how many emails, texts, and phone calls I get during the bar preparation season of the big box bar reviews from individuals that say, I'm taking one of those courses and I already know I'm not going to pass. I know that what I'm learning in this course is not going to be enough for me to be successful, but I'm afraid to do anything different. So I'm just going to take the exam, and then I'll talk to you when I'm done. Maybe I'll come back to you, maybe after my second free or my first free retake or my only retake from the big box bar reviews. Maybe I'll try twice with them, and if that doesn't work, then I'll come back to you. And I certainly understand that, and I'm not disparaging anyone in that situation. But I think the reality is that if you are one of those people that's so afraid that you're going to walk right into the fire, if you will, with no preparation or improper preparation, and you know it's not working, well, you know, you're not the person to work with us. I'm looking for the person that follows their own path, that makes their own journey, that knows when something's right for them and when it's wrong. I love the people that say, doesn't matter what I spent with the big box bar review, I can tell it's not going to work, and I need to pass the bar. I'm determined to pass the bar. I have a reason to pass the bar, and I can't afford to wait 6 months or a year or 2 years to figure out that doing the same old thing is going to give me the same old result. And so if you're one of those people that followed your own path, that came to a bar review that didn't advertise on your law school campus and didn't spend millions and millions of dollars giving out swag and goodies and gifts and paying too much for rooms and too much for professors just so that they could be there and sucker you in, well, congratulations. You're the people that are going to pass the bar. You're the people that are going to lead the bar, and you're the people that are going to make a difference in the world. As for the rest of you, well, some of you will pass and some of you will fail. Sadly, more of you will fail than pass. And at some point, you'll begin to realize that the safety of following the crowd actually turned out to be no safety at all. It turned out to be a disaster. And so I want to commend those of you who had the courage to say, I'm going to follow my own path. I'm going to do what is right for me. Now, if a course like ours is not right for you, I recommend and commend that as well. But I just want to say that it breaks my heart when I see people who I know recognize that they are absolutely not going to be successful on the exam, but who are so fearful that they can't break away to do what they know they have to do. So if you're one of the people that had the courage to break away, to follow your own path, we want to celebrate what you've done. And then finally, and this is directed mostly at students in our own course, I want to celebrate you because you're part of a very special community. You know, over the 30 years that we've been teaching, we've helped thousands and thousands of people pass their bar exams, but we've never done it by being the flashiest or the loudest or the biggest. We've never done it by going on law school campuses. We've never done it by giving away lots of goodies. We haven't done it by advertising in the big legal publications. We haven't done it by writing snarky blog articles for snarky companies. We just haven't done that. We've done it one person at a time, one story at a time, one friend at a time. And if you're a part of our community, or you're thinking of becoming a part of our community, I want to celebrate that. I want to celebrate the fact that you've been willing to share your time and your expertise. So many of our past successful students still stay actively involved with our current students. I know of no other bar review in the country where that exists. I want to suggest that if you've been a part of our community and you've been willing to listen to the stories of other people and to support other bar takers, you're a very special person. I am absolutely blown away when I go on our private Facebook group, which has, I think, right now maybe 400 or so members. And in that private Facebook group, we have students supporting each other, sharing their information and ideas, asking questions, encouraging and lifting each other up, holding each other accountable. And along with that, there are all of these people that took our course over the past 3 decades who are still there as volunteers to help out new members who are going through the course. That is really remarkable. It's an amazing community. And if that's not the community that you're in, well, I invite you into ours. I mean, come find out what it's like on the other side. You know, the people who engage, who ask questions, who share ideas, who are participants in the process are special people. I also have found that when these same people become members of their bar, they take the same qualities there. They become leaders in the bar. They become the people that put together working groups. They become the people that advocate for particular positions within the bar associations themselves. They sponsor all kinds of great activities. I could name a lot of names today of past successful students. I am so amazed and pleased when I see all the things they're doing literally around the country. But you know, they're special kinds of people. They're the kinds of people that understood that community was better than isolation, that sharing and caring for other people was a good thing to do, that instead of being competitive and cutthroat, it was better to collaborate. And those are very special people, and we celebrate you. And if you're in a position and a circumstance right now where you don't feel like you're being particularly part of a collaborative community, then maybe you should consider making a change. So those are the 6 things that I think make a bar taker special right now. You're fearless, you're determined, you refuse to quit, you have a reason for passing the bar, you follow your own path, and hopefully you're part of our community. If anything that I've said today makes you at least curious about what it is that we do at Celebration Bar Review that maybe isn't happening where you are, I hope you'll reach out and contact me. There is a link on this page where you can set up a free consultation to talk with me. And I'm glad to do that. I'd love to have those conversations and to talk about your studies and what we could do that help you. And if you're someone who's taking the bar exam in just a few weeks, I want to wish you all the best on your tests. I want it to be a success for you, regardless of how you studied or how you prepared. But if for some reason you're not successful, I hope you'll reevaluate what you're doing and then ask yourself, am I fearless and determined? Am I someone who refuses to quit? Do I have a reason for what I'm doing? Am I willing to follow my own path? Do I want to be part of a different kind of a community? And if the answer to any or all of those is yes, then I hope you'll reach out and talk to us, because I think we can be a good match for you. Well, that's our message for this week. Thanks so much for being with us. Again, if you're taking the exam in July 2019, hang in there. We're almost there, getting closer. We'll have more information for you next week as we get a little bit closer to the exam. And if you're taking the exam in 2020 or later, I want to remind you once again of our free webinar. It's this Thursday at 7 p.m. The title is Do Something Different. Make the next bar exam your last bar exam. You can register here on the show notes or by going to celebrationbarreview.com/webinar. And we'll see you Thursday at 7 p.m. Well, thanks, everybody. Have a great study week. We'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers at www.celebrationbarreview.com.